Good Thanksgiving Eve, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Crist. That fellow there is Frank Fear. And Frank, I tell you what, got a lot of good stuff to talk about here and a great guest again tonight.
Yeah.
Looking forward to another big show.
Boy, I'll tell you that we're going to talk about that tremendous basketball game. Yahoo!
Yes,
those Mountaineers look good, and boy, did they play a tough team. Gonzaga is tough, and
Yes.
It's as Tony Caridi would say and does say, it's a great day to be a Mountaineer.
That's right. And that, that basketball team we've been watching here early on in the season. And I think a lot of people saw us against Pitt, and we just didn't perform very well. We didn't shoot well. One of the things I've always noticed too is when you're a good defensive team, if you shoot the ball halfway decent, that helps your defense so much for some reason. And today we shot pretty well, or at least a couple of them did. And our defense was stellar and shut those guys down when they needed to. And what a win, man. That's a signature win for DeVries right off the bat.
Yeah, and Gonzaga didn't make it easy at all.
No,
I mean,
no.
DeVries was double teamed every time he touched the ball, but he made a number of great steals. And the thing about shooting is that battle for Gonzaga had his way in the first half, 5 for 7, I think 14 points, and we only shot 30%. But boy, did Small come. Small was big in the second half. Had just a great stroke. And then we ended up, I think, shooting about 41, 42%, which means we shot much better than that to overcome the 30% in the beginning. But, you can tell, this is a former coach. You can tell when a coach knows what he's doing. And you and I had a chance to chat with him a couple of months ago in Wheeling, and he's the real deal, as is the women's coach, Coach Kellogg. These are great coaches. He's recruited really good players, and you can tell that. And what's amazing to me, Greg, is, and you know how difficult it is, these guys are playing well together.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about a lot is this is a whole new squad, and only one guy came back. He has since redshirted, so this is a new team. And one of the big things I said, there is something to be said about chemistry. Playing together, working together, and getting familiar with each other. And I think as the season goes on, I think we're going to see these guys improve with this. They just they've clearly got the talent. We just have to hope that they can gel and keep it going. And they're very talented. You can see that they're athletic, they're quick, they play good defense, shoot the ball halfway decent. A couple of them are just outstanding, offensive players, but they play good defense too. And that defense is what's going to get them there. And you just hope they can continue to gel like they did today. Looked awful impressive.
Yeah, and Louisville will be. I was mentioning to Kelly, it is going to be a tall order for us. They dismantled Indiana today, a ranked team, top 15 team, beat them by 28. And now we've got to play them tomorrow. But it's on TV, and I think the advice we would give fans is, that was a great win today. If they win tomorrow, wow. Not only will WVU be in the top 25, and by the way, there are 6 other teams, 6 Big 12 teams that are in the top 25 men's. It's going to be a tough season because of all those great teams. But that'll be interesting to watch if the Mountaineers can follow up a great game today with a solid performance tomorrow against Louisville. And we'll just see.
Yep. I'm anxious to see that. I'm anxious to see how they play in this next game. See if it's a flash in the pan or if it's real. And I've said all along, and I've always said this. I feel like I know a little bit about basketball, but your defense is that's what gets everything going. And as long as you play good, and and I'm rambling a little bit here, but you don't have to be a great shooter, a great athlete, or anything like that, to be a good defender. Being good on defense involves effort. A lot of for the most part, a strong effort and determination and that sort of thing. And if you got that and can play defense, you can stay in games. Offense is not doing well, and that's something I think I'm going to like about this team. I think no matter how the offense is going, I think that defense is going to be there, and I think that's going to keep us in some games.
Yeah, and I think that it's not okay. Golf has it nailed here. We needed a test to get that swag, and you could see it. I mean, really, right off the bat, boom, scoring in overtime, and then they came back. We turned the ball over a couple of times, but we stuck with it, and they had that confidence that, to me, is amazing for him to develop that culture so quickly. And here's Timothy saying that is our depth. Yeah. And, you saw it at the center position when they needed to score, they went down. But, and then because Kelly and I had a side conversation earlier, it's because it's not only they beat a ranked team in Indiana that was favored, but they beat them by 28.
Yeah.
I mean, it was exactly. And so Louisville's been down for a while, and it looks like the new coach has that team back. And lest we forget, let me pull this up as well. Let's not forget the women. And they're not going to have as tall an order. They're playing High Point on Friday night down in Fort Myers, and then the winner of that game, which is likely to be West Virginia, plays either Boise or Illinois State again at 5:00 on Saturday. Not a huge challenge. Then you've got one of those teams, and the big challenge would be Texas in the championships if they get there. And I think the odds are that the women are going to get to the championship game. Now, the only negative thing about it is that last thing on the crawler. I don't know Flow Sports, but evidently Flow Sports is another one of those subscription channels. Yeah. And a lot of the women's games, if they're not on ESPN Network or ESPNU or 2, they're on ESPN Plus. But my understanding is that Flow Sports is not on YouTube. It is on Roku. So there's a possibility if you're a Roku subscriber, and that you may, if you go to their website, this is coming up now, you may want to take a chance and see if you can sign up for a free trial. I didn't check that, but what you want to do is make sure if you do a free trial, you're not sucked into getting a subscription after a period of time. But otherwise, radio, if you live in West Virginia, is about the only way that you're going to be able to watch the women this weekend.
Yeah, on that women's team, I haven't seen them play myself. I did see a little bit on TV the other day. But I've talked to a lot of people up in Morgantown, and they say that they are fun to watch. And they're kind of like the men's team. They defend you. I mean, they get after you on defense and up and down the floor with it. Entertaining brand of basketball, and so far so good. So that'll be fun to watch them as well. And I actually do have the Roku TV. I've never heard of Flow Sports. So I'll have to go there and see if I can tap into something. I don't know.
Well, I hate to say this, but with these subscription services, I think what we should do is put an end to this show, and then you and I have Greg and Frank TV or something.
There you go.
And start doing subscriptions. Yeah. Well, the on a negative side, but it was a great season. The soccer seasons are over now. The women lost to Kentucky in the first round of the NCAAs in a shootout, but they had a great season. And by the way, I think some people don't know this. The women have Big 12 soccer. The men do not. Right. And then the men lost to Virginia on Sunday in the second round of the NCAAs. And the good news, they were the Sun Belt regular season and tournament champs. And they ended the season like the women with just a spectacular record, 13-2-7 for the men and 12-5-3 for the women. And they finished third in the tough Big 12 in soccer. I think TCU was the regular season champ, and then Kansas, I think, won the tournament, and they took out West Virginia. So congratulations to both soccer teams.
Yep. They both had good seasons, and yeah, the soccer thing again. I'm not much of a soccer person. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I got really confused about those seedings on the men's side, and West Virginia having to travel and that sort of thing. And I thought, man, that don't seem fair. And somebody was trying to explain it, and I still didn't understand why it worked out that way. They explained it to me, but it still didn't make sense. But anyway, they had great seasons, both of them. And, I think West Virginia, the men's may have been even ranked first or second there for a while. And they're really good programs. I mean, this is not anything new up there for the soccer teams. They've been doing that for a few years now.
Oh,
so
boy. They're great.
that's often both the men and the women.
Yeah. And here's my wife. Got to give a shout out to Kathy Fair, who's in the next room watching on TV. She enjoyed the game too. They looked good, and our new coach. And when I got back from the trip with you to Wheeling, I told her, I said, watch these two new coaches. They're fantastic, easy to interact with, great guys. And talking about great people, we are so pleased tonight to have Andy Peters with us, who's in the back room. And this is, the more I learn about Andy, he was in Morgantown after about the same time, but a few years after, 1 year after I left. But boy, what a tremendous person! And I'll tell you, Andy, we are so pleased to have you with us. Get my words right. And there you are from Washington, Pennsylvania tonight. Thank you for being
here. Yeah. No, thanks, Frank, and thanks, Greg. I've heard a lot about this show from some of my former teammates that have been on, and they've talked very positively about it. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys tonight.
Awesome. It's great to have you. I was looking at the years you were there. The first thing that always pops in my mind, I always wondered, did he know Tom Pridemore? Because I always have to think about what years. Tom Pridemore's from my hometown. And
Amstead.
Anstead. Yep. I was a little bit younger than him, but I was in elementary school when he was in high school. But man, did we love our football team when he played. Won a couple of state championships, and went on, of course, to WVU and had a great career. So I always have to ask if
absolutely. Tommy was a great player, not only for us, but with the Atlanta Falcons, as you know. Tremendous athlete.
Yep, he was a good player. Andy, I know one of the things that our listeners like to know right off the bat is they want to know about your high school days, where you went to high school, what you did in high school, and some of your accomplishments and accolades that you come out of there with before attending WVU.
Yeah, so I went to Fox Chapel High School. Fox Chapel School District's made up of course, Fox Chapel, but also Harrod Township, Aspenwall, and Blawnock. So I lived in a Harrod Township. And it was a fairly new school district. I moved there from Long Island, New York when I was 10 years old. And my brother Roger was actually on one of the first teams that they had there. And he played football, basketball, and baseball. And he was a great role model, as well as my other brother, Bill, playing sports all the time. So coming up, there was no question that I was going to play sports. And at Fox Chapel, I played football and basketball, and I tried a little bit of baseball until my football coach talked me into giving it up and lifting weights because he thought I had a potential collegiate career, which he gave me some wise advice. So at Fox Chapel, I was fortunate to be on a team with another kid in my class by the name of Rich Kristen, who was a tremendous fullback and linebacker. And he got very, very highly recruited. And when college coaches would come to see film of Rich, they saw me. And they saw another WVU future player, Tom Bradner, who would be good for you to have on your show.
Yeah.
So on our team, we had 3 Division I players at Fox Chapel. And we had the first winning season at Fox Chapel High School in the history of the school, my junior year and then my senior year. So we won 7 or 8 games. So back then, you had to win the conference in order to go to the playoffs. So we didn't, unfortunately, get to go to a playoff. But back then, Western Pennsylvania football was in its heyday, and we played against kids that went on to play in the pros. I don't know if you remember Brian Bashnagel that played for the Chicago
Oh, yeah.
Bears. He played for North Allegheny, right, and numerous other guys. But week in and week out playing, North Hills and North Allegheny and Shaler. I mean, they were tough kids. There were tough games, and a lot of kids went on to play at different schools. And I was fortunate to have a really good coach by the name of Len Wakuliak. And for Tom Bradner and I and Rich, he went out and beat the bushes, and we heard from so many colleges. It was unbelievable. Lots of letters, and then a lot of in-school visits and that sort of thing. But I played defensive lineman at probably 180 pounds, which is not crazy these days, in offensive guard. So I made second team All-State my senior year as offensive guard. But I made first string all WPIL defensive tackle my senior year. And I'll never forget, as soon as that came out in the Post-Gazette, I'd even quadruple the number of schools I heard from that afternoon, because player heard about that. So it was really great to be part of to start a winning culture at that school. They've put some players, alumni from Fox Chapel in the pros, Leo Wisniewski, Steve Wisniewski, right? Those guys went They've been a little bit down on their luck in recent years because their enrollment's not as big as some of the schools they're in the class with, but hopefully they'll bounce back. But tremendous time at Fox Chapel. And the other thing I think that helped me in getting recruited was playing basketball, because I think the college coaches like the fact that you're an athlete, and they could see you and how you moved on a basketball court, not just on a football field. So,
right.
Yep.
So, aside from the NIL and the transfer portal and all those type of things, and the social media, the recruiting process, you said you got a lot of letters and heard from a lot of schools. What was different about the recruiting process then that you see now? And I know, again, the NIL and all that stuff don't count, but what was the recruiting process like really back then?
Yeah, so it would be an in-school visit. I guess that's similar to now. Michigan would roll through, and Penn State and Pitt, and of course West Virginia, and different schools, and you would meet, and it seemed like we met in the coach's office, and the schools would make their pitch, and you could tell they just got done watching film.
Right.
Those that were interested, started to talk about you making a visit up to their campus or going to their games. I would say what would be really different about it, it was, I just think it was simple, right? When you went to the campuses, I don't remember really being in awe of facilities or caring about facilities so much. I cared more about what my future would be at that school. What could I major in? What could I learn? What could I graduate with a degree in? What was the team like, right? What was their record like? I certainly looked at that at West Virginia. I looked at the players that were there, and I was projected to be a defensive end. So I was really interested in see who else was there that was a defensive end and what class they were in and how much they played. So I'm sure players do that same type of thing now. But it certainly wasn't as publicized without the social media stuff. I mean, really, nobody knew that much about what was going on with you other than the people that were involved with you, I guess.
Right. So who from West Virginia recruited you, or who sold you on West Virginia?
Well, the people that sold me, that's kind of a list. Frank Signetti made first contact, right? And it's really great to see his son Kurt do so well, and his other son Frank has had a really great career, and hopefully it continues as well. So very happy for the Signetti family. And Frank was great to deal with. He recruited Gary Lombard as well. It was amazing how many kids that we had from Western Pennsylvania in my class, right? And classes around me as well. When I look at the starting defense for the Pitt game, there's me at the strong end, and there's Gary Lombard at the weak side end from Perryopolis. Then you have Chuck Smith at defensive tackle from Angola. And you have Rich Lukowski from Franklin Regional.
Boy.
And then you have Ray Marshall from Clairton. And you have Chuck Braswell from Clairton. So half the defense was from Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you look at the offense, you had Tom Bradner and Steve Early, both from Western Pennsylvania. But then you had, Artie Owens from over on the east side of the state. And, excuse me, Danny Kendra as well. And Frank did a great job with recruiting Pennsylvania kids, right? Probably one of the biggest things I remember was my in-home visit with Bobby Bowden and Frank Signetti. My mother was from New Orleans. And if they would have had the chunky soup mom, that would have been my mother, right? She was quite the character. She was quite the cook. She made, she called them vitality bars, or like protein bars. And believe it or not, Rocky Bleier was dating the gal down the street from me. And my mom ended up making these bars for Rocky Bleier when he worked out for the Steelers in the summertime.
Wow.
So Bobby Bowden and my mother, both being Southerners, really hit it off. And my dad grew up in Pittsburgh, and Frank Signetti was a Pittsburgh or Western Pennsylvania guy. So those two hit it off. So when they came to my in-home visit, there was no question where I was going to go to college. I was going to West Virginia. My dad had a large amount of relatives in Moundsville, West Virginia. In fact, one of his cousins owned and operated the Fostoria Glass Company that operated for years and years in Moundsville. And I used to go tour the factory, and I think they were prime members of the Moundsville Country Club, and we used to go down there and play golf and hang out at their country club. So I had a West Virginia connection. And then when you make your visit, you meet people, and I'm sure you guys have heard this name, Billy Joe Mantooth. You run into Billy Joe Mantooth, and he makes quite the impression on you. He was a pretty cool guy, and he was very convincing about where we should go to school. Right. And such a great visit to Morgantown. Frank picked me up after a basketball game at Knock High School, and we drove down with Tom Bradner, and we spent 3 days down there and just had a great time. And you get that family feeling and that real strong vibe that Morgantown has and the West Virginia football program. And I was really sold. And that was a big part of it.
Yeah, it's awesome. A great story. Awesome. Once you got to West Virginia now, let's talk about your playing days and at WVU and the coaches and all the things you went through there. Talk about your time at WVU and what that was like.
Yeah, so it's amazing. 4 short years could affect someone's life so dramatically. I like to think I had some athletic success while I was there, but it actually turned out to provide me with so much professional success later in life. It's just unbelievable. And it really has an effect on my family as well, because all 3 of my kids ended up going to WVU. And my daughter, Erin, you're talking about the women's soccer team. She was on Nikki Izzo's first women's soccer team at WVU and played there for 4 years.
Wow.
Awesome.
So WVU, big part of my life. Start off, your freshman year, and you really don't know what you're getting into. The jump from high school to college is pretty significant, both socially and also athletically. And they don't do it anymore because there's no freshman team, but a lot of the guys on my team that were freshmen could probably attest to feeling the same way as me. They used to have the Saturday before the first varsity game, a scrimmage against the freshmen. So it was freshmen against the varsity. And I had to try to tackle a guy by the name of Kerry Marbury. I failed so dramatically at that. I really doubted myself that I was going to be able to play college football. Right. But then you go and you keep on practicing and learning and experiencing things, and things slow down a little bit for you. And what really was a turning point for me was the spring game my freshman year, when I was named the most improved player, or the defensive player of the game. And I was able to parlay that into starting varsity in my sophomore season. That's how significant that game was. And my first game was against the University of Maryland, where Danny Buggs ran that punt return back for a touchdown. It wasn't off, but it was pretty close to it. And that was my first game. And I remember it vividly because I got ear-holed twice on crackback blocks within the first quarter that I thought, oh my God, is this how rough college football really is? I don't know if I'm going to be able to hack this because the guy about knocked me out. But he never got me after that second time. And we beat them. And then we went on to win our first 3 games in 1973. And we were looking pretty good. We beat Maryland. We beat Virginia Tech. In fact, never lost to Virginia Tech in 4 years. And we beat the University of Illinois at Illinois. And then we come home and A. Dillon gets hurt, right? And we had such a talented team with Danny Buggs and Marshall Mills and Artie Owens and Ron Lee and all these great athletes that, were just fantastic. And we didn't have a quarterback anymore. And our season really tailed off after that. And then we came back and beat Miami and Syracuse. And I think we ended up being 6-5, which in today's day and age, you would have gone to a bowl, right? Yeah. And then 1974 rolls around, and it's probably one of the most disappointing experiences of my athletic career. And we go 4-7, right? And we were predicted to be really good, and we had the talent to be good. But again, our quarterback play was substandard, and you have these wonderful receivers, but we're having difficulty getting the ball to them, and things just didn't click. We lost the first game to Richmond. Then I think we beat Kentucky, but then it didn't work out well for us, and we won our last game at Virginia Tech, and I think that saved Bobby Bowden's job. And you guys probably know everything that went through with that. He had. Personally, I think it was really good for his career to have gone through that because I think it made him a better coach. We didn't see a lot of him down on the defensive side of the ball. He was offense coordinator and he was more CEO. But once his job was severely threatened the way it was, you could feel the change in winter work in January and through spring practice and through the fall. And we didn't have as much talent on that 75 team as we had in 73 and 74. But what we had were a bunch of seniors that stuck together. And we ended up going overall 9-3 when we were predicted to only win 1 regular season game. And we had some tremendous victories. Probably one of the most underrated victories was going out to San Francisco and beating the University of California. And not just beating them badly. I think we must have had close to 400 yards rushing in that game. We knocked Chuck Muncie out in the second quarter. He was a non-factor. I think we beat him like 28-14. We were so mad when we went through our walkthrough on Friday. They had the University of Western Virginia coal miners on the scoreboard. And we said, how much disrespect is this? Right? And we took it out, and those guys were so surprised. And that Cal team ended up tying for first place in the Pac-8 that year. That's how great victory that was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Pitt game, which was just absolutely tremendous. And then the Peach Bowl. But one thing I did want to tell you about my recruiting, this good story, is that my cousin married an All-American Pitt football player, and he ended up playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His name was Paul Martha. And in 1961, I think he was drafted number 1 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this guy was my hero. And his brother played at West Virginia, Richie Martha. At the same time Paul was at Pitt, Richie was at West Virginia, and I think John Antonick has written about that rivalry between the two and the whole family situation. But when I'm getting recruited and I'm trying to figure out where to go, and I always wanted to go to Pitt, believe it or not, because I was from Pittsburgh, Paul Martha told me, don't go to Pitt. Whatever you do, Carl DePasqua has been their coach for the last 3 years, and they've won 1 or 2 games for the last 3 years in a row. And I don't want you to go into that situation. So go anywhere, but don't go to Pitt. So I give them a lot of credit for
That's right.
that situation.
Amazing.
Now, how about big games? I know you mentioned the Cal game and some others, but talk about some of the bigger games that you played. You mentioned that Peach Bowl. It's funny, last night where I work, we're having a little fundraiser, and we've been putting together some stuff for a silent auction. And I come across somebody gave me a Peach Bowl program from '75, and I was flipping through and looking at all you guys and reading all the background and stuff. It's really interesting. But so I know that was a big game. But what about some of the more memorable games that you played in at West Virginia?
Well, let's see. The Maryland game to start off with, for sure. All the Pitt games were big.
Yeah.
Penn State games were big. I have one nightmare that's still recurring. Playing up at State College, I had the opportunity to intercept a pass on Penn State's 30-yard line. I got between John Cappelletti and Tom Schumann, the quarterback. And Schumann had looked the opposite direction, and then he didn't really look and see me, and he threw the ball to Cappelletti, and I was between the two. And I had it for about a step, and then I dropped it. And boy, I didn't hear it from Coach Bowden. But the ones I've really heard it from were my brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Roger. I've never. He went to Penn State, of course, right? And he never let me forget that. Then, of course, later on in years, he's on a plane with Tom Schumann, and they have a big laugh about that story. And Schumann remembered the play. And then I was at a golf tournament with Joe Paterno. And I said, okay, I got to ask him about this. So I said, hey, Coach Andy Peters, I played for West Virginia in 1973. Do you remember that game that we had? You guys beat us 62-14, but do you remember in the first quarter that play? And he goes, yeah, I remember that play. I said, that wouldn't have made any difference. He goes, oh, no, Andy. If you would have picked that off and ran it in, that whole game
made you feel better about it.
Yeah. Beating the University of Miami in Miami. We were very fortunate. We got to play in the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl. Not when they counted, but we played the teams that had right? So we played Tulane in the Sugar Bowl, and we played SMU my senior year in the Cotton Bowl. And awesome. That was quite a game. You know, that senior season was so special, and we ran off 5 wins in a row, and one of them was against SMU, at SMU, and that was a really tough game. I think we won by maybe a score or less. And I remember Coach Bowden was so aggravated because the SMU band was right behind our bench, and they played the whole game. They never stopped, right? They had a really fast quarterback, and they had Arthur Winningham, who I think played for the Oakland Raiders as a running back. But we came through and won that game, and that was during the Texas State Fair. So now they have it for the Red River rivalry, but when we were there, it was for the Texas State Fair. So the place was sold out. It was a really big game. And then beating Virginia Tech and Boston College was always special because the rivalries there. One thing that's interesting is that we played against 3 players that ended up being very successful pro football coaches. Played against Bill Cowher, who was at North Carolina State. He was a freshman when I was a senior. Played against Bruce Arians when he was a quarterback at Virginia Tech, and played against Dave Wannstedt when he was a tight end at Pitt. So I think it's a unique opportunity.
Wow.
Those awesome. 3 guys.
That's amazing. That's amazing. As I mentioned to you, Andy, and Greg knows too, we've got a video of the Peach Bowl. Why don't we cue that up, and you can talk us through that game. It was an amazing turnaround from being down 10-0 to winning the game 13-10, and how you did it both offensively and defensively. Classic. And your Pennsylvania guys really came through in that game too. No question about it.
One
So,
thing that would be good before you put that on, Frank, for the audience to know is that Bobby Bowden got a phone call from the Clemson coach inviting us to come use his practice facility. It was Frank Howard, because he didn't really like Lou Holtz too much. So get out of the cold of Morgantown, come down to Greenville. We'll give you all of our facilities, and you can practice here, then go down to Atlanta. So that's what we did.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
he actually gave us a pep talk before we got on the bus to go to beat North Carolina State.
Yeah. So much for the coaching fraternity. Everybody likes each other.
Yeah.
Broke that myth, and that's another big name, Frank Howard. My God,
Yeah.
what an icon. Well, let's cue this up, and it's about 2 minutes long. And as I mentioned to you earlier, there's no audio, so you can talk us through it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we weren't feeling that great, with being down like that. And then, the pass to Scott McDonald, he was fantastic player for us. Came over from the basketball team. Artie Owens had the catch, right before halftime. We were with Artie this weekend, Gary Lombard and I, and he said, "I'm kind of mad at Danny Kendra. He threw me that pass, and I caught it for a touchdown. And then when I got to the pros, they wanted to make me a wide receiver. And there's Artie catching that pass right there. And that took us into halftime, just being down a little bit, right? And then Scott caught that ball, and the kid from North Carolina State almost caught him there at the end, but he pulled his foot out. And what a tremendous feeling that was. And then we had to go back out there and hang on, the defense, and Ray Marshall made some great plays, and Steve Dunlap, I think that was Ray Marshall right there that made that play. And I just remember being so tired because, we had it was so emotional, and just trying to hold them off at the last minute to keep from scoring a touchdown. And we did it. We pulled it off, and then the Pridemore interception locked it up for us. And that was, what a great feeling. And my grandmother was there, my aunt, my brother, my parents, and we went down to the underground and had probably the best New Year's Eve celebration that I've ever had in my entire life after that game. And what a way to go out, having that be your last college football game. So I think about my first game being Danny Bugg's punt return for a touchdown, and my last game being the Peach Bowl. I think I'm a pretty fortunate guy to have that on the bookends.
What if anything, did Coach Bowden say in the locker room after the game? That was his last game, correct?
Yeah, that was his last game. But I don't remember there being a lot of rumors or anything about him leaving. If he knew about it at that time, at least I didn't know about it. And, I was pretty surprised in some respects that it happened, and kind of sad, because one of the things I really remembered about that is how I wish so much I could have gone to a bowl my sophomore year. And I think all of us, if it had been possible, even would have played that much harder to get back my junior and senior years, right? Because that was such a fantastic experience. I wanted to do it again. I really wished I had another year of eligibility where I could go back and experience that again. But that bowl, I mean, a lot of people today say, oh, there's a no-name bowl, this, no-name bowl, that. I tell you what, those players that are going to those no-name bowls, they really appreciate that. It's a great reward experience for them that they'll have forever. And I have a Peach Bowl championship ring that I wear every day from that game. We didn't get it at that time. It was an anonymous donor that gave us these rings probably about 10 years ago. We still don't know who it was. We have some ideas, but every day I think about that Peach Bowl, right?
Well, back then, the Peach Bowl, that was a significant bowl. It wasn't just one of those bowls. That was a significant bowl. Right. And I always, and I've told Frank and others this story before. Somebody else we had on, we were watching a video of the Peach Bowl, and my father, who he passed away from ALS in 1977, and in '75, of course, him and Tom Primore's father knew each other pretty well. They lived in Anstead, and they got tickets and took my dad to that Peach Bowl game, and that was, of course, last football game he got to see. But he was a huge fan, and absolutely was thrilled to get to go to that game. So that was that always, every time I see the highlights of it, it brings back some good memories there for sure. And like I said, that was not a just a throw out there bowl game. That was a significant bowl game at that time.
There weren't many bowls back then.
Right.
There really weren't. And when I think about that season, it could have even been better. We lost 2 teams when you add the differential together by 3 points.
Wow.
Syracuse and Tulane. We lost to Tulane 16-14, and we lost to Syracuse by 1 point. So we could have been 11-1 very easily, right? And what's strange, we lost to Penn State, and we earned that defeat, right? And I don't go back to Penn State anymore to watch any football games, believe me. But North Carolina State went to State College and beat Penn State at Penn State that year. And then we beat North Carolina State. So obviously we were a better team than showed up in State College that day, beating North Carolina State. But what a tremendous year that was. And, it would have been great if Coach Bowden could have stayed on and carried things on there. I love Frank Signetti, but, poor Frank had the tremendous health issue with cancer, right? And I hear a lot of people talk negatively about the Signetti years. I like to see anybody try and be a collegiate coach with cancer, right? And try and do that and raise your family and all the pressures of everything you got going on and all the seniors that he lost from our team. And the schedule just got rougher and tougher. And, he recruited some pretty good players there, right? And he had facilities that were starting to crumble. And other schools were really starting to juice their facilities up. So it was probably getting harder and harder to recruit at West Virginia. But he pulls in Oliver Luck, he pulls in Darryl Talley. And, I really wish that Frank would have been healthy during that tenure. And I wish that he would have had the benefit of the new stadium like Don Nalen did, because Frank Signetti ended up in the College Football Hall of Fame. And when I think about the coaches we had, Frank Signetti in the Hall of Fame, obviously Coach Bowden, Chuck Clausing in the College Football Hall of Fame. We had Alex Gibbs, who invented the zone read blocking scheme for the Denver Broncos. We had Duke Henshaw, who coached for the Tennessee Titans all those years. Joe Pendry coached with Alabama, with Nick Saban, and coached for the New York Jets, right? We had just tremendous coaches. Duke Henshaw, all right, I mentioned already, but he was such a great player at WVU. And Donnie Young, right? Donnie Young brought so much motivation and never had a bad thing to say. He's always encouraging. We're very blessed to have that coaching staff.
Yeah, that's that coaching staff. We've talked to some of these folks, and everybody talks about the coaching staff. And you look at what they went on to become. Even after that, it's been pretty amazing when you look back on it. Speaking of that, one of the things Frank and I talk about often is you guys that we have on the show, and we talk to. One of the things that we enjoy the most is researching it and looking at your life and everything you've accomplished. And the fascinating thing is, and again, we've talked about this time and time again, is what so many of you have accomplished since your playing days at WVU, and how much impact you think WVU had on that lifestyle and life of your own. So why don't you talk about after you graduated, you went on into the business world, and obviously you've had tremendous success. Talk about that again, because again, me and Frank talk about this with all the guests we have from your era and even before, and what they have accomplished since they got out of the school. Some of the things that they've accomplished has just been absolutely amazing to us, and you're no different. So we've researched it.
Well, I've been very fortunate to have a pretty successful business career. And I'll tell you what, I've gone through the hard knocks of it. When I left WVU, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I kind of thought that I wanted to give mining a chance. And my father worked for U.S. Steel, and he had me interview with the head of the coal division, and he gave me an opportunity. But he goes, "You're going to have to start off as a coal miner." I said, "Okay, I'm up for that." I mean, pretty big cultural shock from college student to coal miner, like overnight. But he said, "We don't know if you're going to like it, and we don't know if we're going to like you. But you go ahead and give it a try, and we'll take it from there. And if you do well, we'll bring you through the program and put you in our management development program," which at that time was one of the best in business in the United States. So I was a coal miner for 18 months. I went through a 6-month strike, contract strike, which I had my first child 45 minutes before my benefits expired. So there I am, coal miner with a baby daughter and no job, right? And my brother was working for Dick Corporation, and I said, "Hey, I'm on food stamps, man, and I got some money saved up. I don't know how long this strike is going to go, and can you get me some work?" So when the union stewards weren't around Dick Corporation's jobs, I went and worked there as a laborer until the union steward came back, and then I had to leave. And, I swept floors, I scrubbed toilets, I did really menial labor, right? And then everything started to click at U.S. Steel after the strike, and I became a fire boss, where I walked the underground mine for 8 hours a day looking for hazards, roof falls, lack of ventilation, methane gas. And then I took my next examination, and I became an assistant mine foreman. And for 6 years, I took men and women underground and loaded coal, right? And not only was I their boss, but I was their EMT in case anybody got hurt. We're 45 minutes away from the portal, so there's no helicopter coming to save anybody. It was me, right? And I was their safety person. Right. So I wore 3 hats. I did that for 6 years. And I was proud to say that, I never got anybody hurt or injured, and we loaded a lot of coal. But then I saw U.S. Steel was selling off a lot of their properties, and I decided to go back to school, and I got a master's in labor relations and personal administration from St. Francis University. And I went to work for Dick Corporation for the construction of the midfield terminal, which was the expansion of the Pittsburgh airport. And I was the safety professional for the job and also the labor relations specialist. And that was a 6-year project. It was $1.2 billion. So I did a really good job there. And then Dick Corporation brought me in to be their director of safety. And that went very well. Then they made me the head of human resources and the head of risk management. And I got some really great experience working for them for about 11 years. And then a crane company that was just forming called Maxim Crane recruited me to be the executive vice president of labor relations and safety and insurance and all those things. And that was going really well. And 9/11 happened. And we had a very leveraged operation where, we didn't have a lot of cash. We had a lot of loans, and companies not running cranes put the company in a difficult situation for just about every executive. And I was the last one, got laid off. And what changed my life is that I got interviewed by Parsons Corporation in Pasadena, California. And the CEO was Jim McNulty from Wheeling, West Virginia. And I'll never forget, I walk into his office, and there's the Rose Bowl back, and I could see the Rose Bowl out his window. And he says, "Andy, I just want to let you know, I know a little bit about you. I think I saw you play football at West Virginia." I said, "Oh, wow, that's great, Jim." And got talking about, Wheeling and so forth, and my relatives from Moundsville. And he goes, "What were their names?" I said, "Dalzell." He goes, I think your cousin actually taught me at such a school, Wellesley or whatever, right? And I got the job, right? So I was chief safety officer for Parsons, one of the largest engineering companies in the United States. And it was fantastic working for them. I learned so much, and I got to go to Iraq 5 times during the rebuild of Iraq. And must say I had a few close calls traveling throughout the country, as you can imagine. And then I had an opportunity to go to the largest engineering company in the world, AECOM, 90,000 employees in 130 different countries, and be their chief safety officer. And what I did for Dick Corporation and Maxim Crane and Parsons and AECOM was to change their culture. Things I learned from Bobby Bowden, right? To bring passion and energy to a process and to coach and teach and mentor people. And everything I learned in those 4 short years, I brought forth in those companies, and I was a superstar because of what I learned at WVU. And I never really got nervous or scared, because I remember walking into stadiums with 60,000 people screaming their lungs out and hating me, whether that be at Pitt or Penn State or whatever, right? So I had the confidence to be able to be in the lion's den. And believe me, selling safety to a bunch of iron workers that don't want to hear anything about it, right? And walking into boardrooms where people have a lot of questions and can certainly be intimidating. I didn't feel that way because of the experience that I carried with me and the confidence and just learning how to handle myself from my time at WVU. So WVU set me up for a world of success that, I've paid it forward. I probably have hired 15 WVU safety graduates, the different companies I've worked for. A number of them were football players. And they've gone on to be very successful in their careers, and I'm very proud of that. And it's been a great experience for me.
Wow. Fantastic. Frank, you got anything to follow up with here?
Well, I've gotten, Andy and I have gotten to know each other a bit, and impressive, totally impressive. And, Andy, you personify the reason Greg and I want to do this show. Because what it does is it not only provides a lens to the history of WVU football, but also the people who played it, who they are, and what they've done with their lives. And it's just what you've done is just incredible. And I think what it does is, in so many ways, is draw more than a dash line connection between football and life, and also emphasizes how important that head coach is. And Greg and I talk about this all the time with people like Coach Neil Brown and the kind of person he is, and the kind of players he's bringing in, and the kind of culture he's building. And we had Daryl Talley on the show, and one of the things he said early on was he was talking about Frank Signetti and the quality of the players he brought in, and how important it was to have those players when that transition occurred, because it really gave Don Nealon a leg up, and you're reinforcing that. So it's an honor, right, Greg, to have this guy. But I will say this. The only thing I can relate to your story, believe it or not, I don't even think Greg knows this, but the one connection is that I was brought in by the federal government when after Saddam Hussein was taken care of, to work with Iraqi universities. And actually, I was on the first commercial plane to fly into Baghdad airport after the war, and talk about close calls. And I will tell you this: I looked very stupid in a jacket with a helmet. And those, Greg, you're never going to see one of those photos because they've been long since. And that was 2000.
I would just look at it and wouldn't say anything else about it. Man, you guys making me feel small. I can't remember. See, I flew to El Paso, Texas one time and watched the Mountaineers play in the Sun Bowl. That's my world travels.
Yeah,
we walked over in Mexico.
Yeah, I went to Iraq because nobody else in the group wanted to go there, and I figured, this is going to be an experience of a lifetime, and it was tough. I mean, it was a it was a interesting experience. But let's talk about the game coming up. It's almost the top of the hour. And by the way, for those who watch the show regularly, Mickey has bronchitis. Unfortunately, went to the doctor. He's on steroids and viral medication, and it's too bad he can't be with us tonight. But we wish Mickey best, and hopefully he'll be with us next week. But the thing, and we were talking about this, Andy, you played a lot of football. You tell me, have you ever seen anything like Texas Tech, where the defense, maybe they're hired to come in every once in a while, but I have never seen a team that is so heavily loaded on the offensive side. And I don't mean this to be critical. I mean, the numbers, you look at the bottom there, nationally, Tech there are 133 teams that the NCAA follows every week. And in defense and total defense, Texas Tech is 125.
Wow.
I mean, they gave up 51 points to Abilene Christian.
Wow.
It is, at any rate. But did you ever play against a team that was that? And I don't want to get you in a situation where someone's going to come after you, but have you seen this kind of imbalance in your own experience?
Not to this extent. I don't think when we played that we ran into defenses that were this poorly ranked nationally.
Well, it's just
Frank, I said the other day that this Texas Tech team really reminds you of the Big 12 a couple of years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, where nobody could play defense in the conference, and the scores were, well, you remember West Virginia and Baylor 70-61 or whatever it was. So this is reminiscent of some of these teams a few years ago in the Big 12. But I don't know that I don't know if there's been that much of a gap, a flip from one side to the other. 17th nationally on offense and 125th on defense. That's a pretty amazing reversal from offense to defense. I don't know if we've seen anything like that.
And what's interesting about it, guys, is that they have developed the offense. I mean, you look at that first paragraph. Morton is getting better and better and better and better. And all his stats, he's progressed with more passes, more completions, higher completion rate, more yards per completion, more TDs, increasing quarterback rating, and fewer INTs. But what's interesting is this year that O-line has given up twice as many sacks as last year. That's something that we're going to have to watch on Saturday. The same thing with Taj Brooks has gotten better. If you look at his stat line, better and better and better. They have a three-headed monster with respect to receivers, Kelly, Douglas, and Eakin. But that third paragraph, I think, again, gives us hope because Morton didn't start the game last year. He came in, and he missed 24 of 37 passes, and he only threw for 140 yards. Brooks got his yards, 150 yards. But if you look at their third down conversion, that's just unbelievable. 11% last year with Morton at quarterback. They only converted 2 of 18. So it's even though he's gotten better and the offense has developed and they have multiple guys that they can pass to, you can see that 2,100 yards from the receivers. Just, Taj Brooks, 1,300 yards just by himself. That's 4,400 yards right there. But last year, we were able to beat him in Morgantown because Morton was not at his best, and they couldn't convert on third down. Even though Marchiol threw 2 interceptions, they could not capitalize.
Yeah, I really like the way we played defense against Cincinnati and UCF. So hopefully we bring that, against Texas Tech as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I hope so too. Yeah. And like I said, we've kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde on defense. One week we're good, next week we're not so good. Worries you a little bit with our pass defense, but I think that just to me reemphasizes the need for a good performance by our defensive line, and so hopefully they'll have together. I don't think we'll have any trouble scoring. We shouldn't against these guys, but we either got to match them score for score, or we got to deny them at least once or twice.
Yeah. By the way, if I was going to say, if for the viewers, if you have a chance, go on our West Virginia, the Voice of College Football, the channel that this program's on, and the simulation every week, Andy. There's the simulation of the game that's coming up that Saturday, and it's a good game, and I'm smiling, which I'm not going to give it away, but it's worth watching. And West Virginia plays good offense and defense when they needed to, and that's reinforced. One of the things that Coach Brown said during his press conference, and I remember this from a couple of years ago, he said the key to beating Texas Tech at Lubbock is they like to get ready to go to the races right out of the chute, score a lot of points in the first quarter, get separation so that now the crowd's into the game. And he said, we just can't let that happen on Saturday. Them getting a quick start, getting the crowd excited. He said that's just not going to, we just got to be very careful. And that goes back to Greg's point about that defense can't, you talk about, the schematics. Defense can't allow long pass plays, long run.
Yeah. I hope we bring the pressure on the quarterback, because all these quarterbacks, their completion percentages dramatically decrease with a little bit of pressure. So that's what I like about Coach Kuntz and his philosophy. He seems to bring the heat a little bit more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think I've said that in every key to the game this year is our defensive line getting pressure on the quarterback, because most of them don't do nearly as well when they're running. Somebody's chasing them.
Right.
And this guy will be no different. We just got to we got to put pressure on him.
It's scary too, right? And somebody's on his tail. He's got a guy wide open and he can't get it to him because he's under duress.
That's right.
Sure.
Yep. Exact same thing for sure.
Well, you talked about keys to the game. I shared this with Andy. Greg, why don't we start with you? Talk us through what you can see as the keys to the game, and then also the score, and then I'll do it. We'll talk about Mickey's too, and then ask Andy to throw his 2 cents in as well.
All righty. Well, like I said, Tech averages roughly 40 points a game. Their offense is explosive. And my first key, as I said earlier, our defensive line has to pressure the quarterback, and our entire defense needs to play stellar. Our defensive backs, and they play a lot better whenever the pressure's on that quarterback. That helps our defensive backs so much. And I just think our D-line has got to get pressure on their quarterback. We're just going to have to match them score for score, just keep up the pace if we have to. And hopefully we get a few stops and we can outscore them. I don't know if it'll be that kind of game where it's 70-68, but I think that our defense has been playing better, and our defensive line's playing a little bit better. Hopefully they'll step up Saturday. I think that's going to be the whole keys, our defense. And I picked WVU to win 35-31.
Very good. Mickey makes a point that I hadn't thought about. The second to last line, it's an 11 o'clock kickoff. I was surprised they picked this game as a noon Eastern kickoff, which means it's 11 o'clock in West Texas. That's awfully early. And Coach Brown talked to it this week, and he said that's not going to be a problem for us because of how we organize our game day. We'll be ready at 11 o'clock. And Mickey just reinforces what you were saying, Greg. They have a balanced attack on offense, good quarterback, good running back, not a good defense. He thinks there's going to be a high-scoring game, more like a track meet than a football game, 41-37. And I'm right there with you guys. I don't think we can contain the Tech offense like we did last year. And in fact, if you go back and look at that game, they came alive in the fourth quarter, and the clock was on our side at that point. I don't think you can stop them, but you got to contain them. Third downs are going to be very critical. And I think we need to play solid, consistent, error-free offense and take time off the clock with long drives. We just can't turn it over, and they can't score unless we turn it over or if they have the ball. So I'm looking at it 44 41. Andy, your thoughts?
Yeah, so very similar. Very important on the road to get off a good start, right? It's fantastic when you can hold them to a 3 and out on their first possession. Like we did with UCF, it gives everybody a bunch of confidence. If we can just get off the field a few times, get a turnover or two, right? That really swings the game, as we all know, one side's favor or not. So hopefully it's more of a game like Cincinnati where we can get a defensive score or a tremendous turnover that puts us in position to score. So I think it's going to be high scoring. I'll say, 45-44, barn burner, West Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all there. It's interesting. Of course, I'm going to put this up, and then the questions comes in from Mark Parsons. But I'll tell you what, Andy, you look at that red at the bottom. Mickey is just wiping the floor with us on these predictions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, look at that. The only thing is, and I don't know about this, but there is a rumor he posts his scores on Monday morning. And so after the game, and so that, but he seriously, he is close. He called the WVU score on the nose last week, as did Greg, but he's ahead of us 8.5 to 1.5, and I don't even think I showed up. I mean, I think if I was inebriated, I would do better than 1.0. I mean, it's totally disgusting. Here's a question. You see, that's right. Mark's right. Only 11 bowl games, so the Peach was a big deal.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, those were the days you were talking about 6 wins, go to a bowl. When I wrote the book about the 66 to 70 Mountaineers and did the deep dive on the bowl games, the 69 Peach Bowl, I found, I think, 5 top 20 teams. 5 top 20 teams, I think it was, that didn't go to a bowl. There was no place for them to go.
Yep.
And you think that can't happen. But Mark has a question here for you. You can read it on the screen there.
Yeah, so Tony Dorsett was a guest of the National Safety Council years ago, and he was sitting at a table signing autographs, and I happened to notice what he was doing, and it was a really long line, over 100 people. So I got in line, and it took me about a half hour to get up to him, and he's wearing sunglasses, and I go, Tony Dorsett, it's November 6th, 1975, Morgantown, West Virginia. Pitt, West Virginia. Do you remember what happened, Tony? And he looks up, he goes, who are you? I said, I'm your worst nightmare. I'm Andy Peters, number 95, defensive end. You remember I hit you and you fumbled in the backfield, but the ref blew the whistle too soon. And wasn't a real fumble. But remember Bill McKenzie kicked that game? He goes, you want my autograph or not? Give it to me.
That's a great story.
The even better story was when I was working for Dick Corporation, we did the remodel of the Pitt locker room at Pitt Stadium. So they had a special construction safety day where they had a luncheon for all the workers. And I said, I'm going to this thing. So Johnny Majors is there. He's giving a big speech and talking about how great Pitt is. And when he's done, he goes, does anybody have any questions? I said, hey, Coach, I do. He goes, oh, yeah, who are you? I said, I'm Andy Peters. I played at West Virginia in 1975 Pitt, West Virginia game. Who won that game, Coach? He says, get him out of here. I got in trouble with my boss when I get back to headquarters.
Yeah.
That's worth it, though, I'm sure.
Yeah. We had Bill on the show, oh my God, about 6 weeks ago. And he talked a lot about that game. What a game. Yeah, what a game. Yeah. We had Frank Nestor on too, who was what a great guy. Had a chance to meet him. Super. Yeah. Good. Well, this has been great, Greg. You can't make it any better than this, Andy. You've been just a phenomenal guest, I'll tell you.
Yep, been fantastic. Yep, we appreciate it. Love hearing the stories. I know our audience loves to hear these stories as well. And like I said earlier, Frank and I always talk about how impressive it is what you guys have accomplished since you graduated from WVU. It's always fun to hear that and amazing to look at and listen to. And we are all grateful that you came to WU and still love WU. That's what makes it so special for us. But yeah, you've been a fantastic guest. We enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah, you represent the university so well.
Yep, sure do. And once again, want to thank you and everybody for tuning in. I know they enjoyed that your conversation. So thank you so much, Andy. We appreciate you.
Yep.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And next week we're going to have another great guest on, David Lockwood, who played at WV defensive back under Coach Nealon, 85 to 88. He has made a national name for himself. They call him Coach Lockdown. You know, I don't even know if this is a complete list of all the coaching stops he's made. WVU, Nevada, Las Vegas, Arizona, Notre Dame, Appalachian State, Minnesota, Kentucky, Wyoming, Memphis, James Madison, Delaware, maybe elsewhere as a college too. But, you know, I've gotten a chance to know him a bit, and he is one of those great defensive coaches that played at WVU. We're looking forward to that, to have David with us. And also, remember, we're here for the pregame show starting early this week, 10:30 to 11:30 on these channels. It's already posted. And then Greg and I will be back for the postgame show that will last for an hour, starting 15 minutes. And as we always say, we want to come into that postgame show with smiles on our face. Right. And it's, we hope, fingers crossed.
A lot easier show to do when we're happy with the win. Makes it a lot easier. So, but we appreciate everybody for tuning in again tonight. Ask you to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. Helps us keep it going. Thanks again to our special guest, Andy Peters, for joining us tonight. A great time listening to him, and we look forward to seeing you on the pregame show Saturday morning. For Frank and Andy, I'm Greg Crist. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.